The MK party is continuing its campaign to have the May 29 elections declared invalid. The party has now turned to the Electoral Court seeking an order to declare the results invalid due to irregularities. The party, led by former President Jacob Zuma, claimed that there is enough irregularities that they would have likely won the elections. They believe the party is demanding a rerun of the vote in the next few months. The party won 58 seats in the National Assembly. For more on this, let's now speak to Sithembile Mbete, who is a Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria, to help us understand the numerical reasoning. But it seems to come down to the apparent discrepancies between votes counted and the votes cast. And this is, of course, on issues being raised by people around why the dashboard that the IEC uses to beam the results had some changes to it. Dr. Sithembile Mbete is joining us this morning. Dr. Mbete, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thanks for having me, Aldrin.
Before we speak about the MK party's case, let's speak about what transpired yesterday. A lot of people crying foul, and some even using it to argue that the MK party has a point, that the elections were rigged. What happened? Why is there a difference in the number of votes that we saw after the declaration of the results compared to what the IEC is beaming now on its various platforms?
Thanks so much for that question. I think that the first thing to clarify is that there is no difference in the results that were declared by the IEC on the 2nd of June and what has been updated on the IEC's dashboard on the website. That was the updates that were made over the weekend. And firstly, to explain that, remember we had 3 ballots in this election. 2 of the ballots, the national ballot and the regional ballot, were to the election of the National Assembly, of the National Parliament. Now, on the dashboard, what we'd been able to see the whole time is that when you went onto the dashboard, on the landing page, you saw the results of the national ballot for the National Assembly. You would then need to use the drop-down menu on the left-hand side to see the results of the regional ballot for each of the regions. What's happened now is that what the IEC has done is that they've updated the landing page on the dashboard to reflect the combined total of both the results of the national ballot and the results of all of the regional ballots for each of the political parties. On the 2nd of June, the IEC announced the result of the national ballot, of each of the regional ballots, and then the combined total of the national and regional ballots, and then the combined number of seats that that gave each party in the National Assembly. So what was announced on the 2nd of June is what is being reflected on the IEC's public dashboard after this weekend. There's usually, when there are more than one ballot that contributes to a particular election, we have this during the local government elections, where if you live in a metro, you vote on 2 ballots for your council. If you live in a local municipality, not in a metro, you vote on 3. You vote 2 for your council, local council, and then 1 for your district municipality. Usually when we have those kinds of elections, there's a bit of a lag for the IEC to update the dashboard to reflect all of the outcomes of the election. And that's basically what has happened this weekend. Unfortunately, that has happened at a time when the election results are also then being queried by the MK, as you said earlier.
Yeah, and that's the issue. But before, again, we go to the MK case, how can somebody right now satisfy themselves by going through the IEC's website, looking through the results, that indeed these are the results that have been declared, and as well as the outcomes that have been promulgated?
So what I would advise people to do is to have a look at the dashboard. So now with the landing page of the dashboard reflects what each political party got in both the national and the regional votes. And then you can also look at what each political party got specifically in each of the regions. And this is now for the National Assembly, and you can see what each party got in each of the provinces. And what you can do is you can compare what is on the dashboard with what is in the downloadable results of the election, which is also on the IEC website. So if you go into elections and then you scroll a bit further down, you will see downloadable election results. And if you go to the 2024 elections, then you'll be able to compare those downloadable election results with what is on the dashboard of the IEC. And if you compare those images with those results with any images of the election results as they were announced on the 2nd of June, if you go look up the YouTube to see that, then you'll see that there's actually difference in the amounts that were announced. Just a point here on the number of votes that were cast. There were about 16 million out of 27 million voters that went out to go vote in this election. If each of those voters had two ballots that they cast for the National Assembly, a national ballot and a regional ballot, it means that the total number of the votes that were cast is 32 million. And so when the quota formula is then used, the quota that is developed to decide how many seats each party receives in the National Assembly, it is derived out of 32 million votes cast. For the provinces, the quota is derived out of the number of votes that were cast in that province for the provincial election, for the provincial legislature.
Again, when you go on that landing page, the IEC's website, so that's results.elections.org.za, right at the bottom, it has the number of registered voters, 27.7 million. Total votes cast is 16.2 million. Total valid votes at 16.077,342 votes. What's the difference between the total valid votes that have been cast and the 32 million votes that you make reference to?
So at the bottom there on that landing page, it unfortunately is still only reflecting the total valid votes cast for the national ballot. Remember that the overall result is determined by the total valid votes cast for the national ballot plus the total valid votes cast for the regional ballot. And now valid votes cast are the number of votes cast minus the spoilt votes, the spoilt ballots. So in this case, we had nearly 200,000 spoilt ballots that were cast. And so it's like 160,000 spoilt ballots that were cast. And so what it reflects, the total valid votes is the number of votes cast minus the spoilt ballots, which gets you then to 16.07 whatever million votes for the national ballot. And then there's the same calculation that's made for the regional ballot. And then it's the national ballot plus the regional ballot is then the total number of votes, that valid votes that were cast in the whole election for the National Assembly.
Okay. And as you mentioned a bit earlier on, unfortunately, all of this is happening during a time as the IEC is being accused by a former statesman, former president of the country who's leading a political party that secured 14.58% of the votes at a national level, making the accusations of vote rigging. How should we understand all of this, and what does it mean for the IEC in having to give this clarity? Yesterday, I have to say also, Dr. Mbete, as people were commenting around this issue, I thought that the IEC would be very quick to go out and explain what exactly is happening. But the statement, I think, came in just before midnight, if I'm not mistaken, around about 10 o'clock in the evening. I could be wrong. But should the IEC bear some responsibility around the communication of what's happening, also taking into consideration that, again, there have been so many changes with this particular election?
Look, I think that it is unfortunate that we didn't get a statement from the IEC sooner than we got it yesterday. I think that they should have explained before even making the changes that the changes were going to be made and why they were going to be made. I think that for the IEC, this is really the first time that their processes are facing this amount of scrutiny from the general public. Some of us have been scrutinizing IEC processes for nearly 15 years now. But I think that for the general public, these are processes that you never really had to think about because the outcomes of the election were kind of taken for granted, right? Because we were in a an environment of where one party was very dominant in the electoral system. With the end of one-party dominance in our electoral system, it means that people are looking more carefully and thinking about questions about how the results are derived, what's the relationship between the percentage of votes that you get and the seat calculation. And that's natural, right? I don't think that that is necessarily malicious. And I think that the IEC hasn't quite adjusted to this new environment of political contestation that they are in. I think, though, that there is malicious questioning about the IEC's processes. That is because certain political parties did not achieve the ends that they were hoping for in this election, or because certain political parties are trying to delay some of the other processes that should naturally follow, and not even naturally, that have to follow by law from a declaration of the election result. And so what we saw with the MKP initially trying to delay the declaration of the result, and then once that didn't succeed, then trying to delay Parliament sitting, the National Assembly sitting on Friday and the National Council of Provinces sitting on Saturday. And then when that didn't work, now saying that they're going to question the whole result, even as they participate in the National Assembly and in different provincial legislatures. I think that that is just mischief, really, for the ends of a particular political party. And just a clarification, I was having a great conversation yesterday with friends from other parts of the world. An organization that is trying to rig an election does not make all of the election results publicly available for everybody to scrutinize. Every single election result from every single voting station is online for you to check. Political parties have verified and checked those results versus the voter slips that their party agents signed at the different different voting stations. And so, whatever, if there's any accusation that anything has been done incorrectly here, all the information is out there for you to look at and to scrutinize with a fine-tooth comb. And that's not how elections get rigged anywhere in the world.
Yeah. I want to go back to, and you make reference there to the MK party. And right now, for instance, one of their members, who has also now been elected a member of a parliament, Jacob Zuma, saying that there can be no inauguration of the KZN Premier on Wednesday, which is scheduled to take place. The IEC confirmed that the NFP didn't get a seat. So actually, the KZN legislature need a revote, or needs to go to a revote. I don't know if you have enough time, perhaps, maybe to explain to us why it is that the NFP would have secured a seat, even though it didn't gather enough votes to meet the minimum threshold before we even speak about the fractions.
Yes. So what we do is that we use in South Africa a system, it's called the Droop formula. It's a highest remainder formula in order to turn the votes that have been cast into seats in a particular legislature. So basically, an electoral system is how you take the votes that are cast and you turn them into seats, you turn them into representation. And we use a formula to do that. The formula for the provinces for allocating seats in the provincial legislatures has not changed with the new electoral system. It's exactly the same formula that we've used in this country since 1994. I just want to clarify that the way that the elections operated at provincial level for the provincial legislatures did not change at all this year. The only change was to introduce independent candidates, but the formula did not change this year. And the way that that formula goes is that it's the number of valid votes that are cast that is divided by the number of seats in that legislature plus one, and then the whole answer of that plus one. And what that gets is a quota that is 43,300 votes in this election for a seat in the provincial legislature. And so that number, the total number of votes that a party got is divided by 43,000. And then there's an answer that you get, right? MK got 36 point, I think it was 7-8 something. Mm-hmm. And then the ANC got its IFP, etc., EFF, NFP, DA. Now, the allocation, there's a first allocation of seats that happens according to the whole number, the number before the point. And so that is done first. So the MK had 36 seats according to that first allocation. The EFF had 1 seat according to that first allocation.
Yeah.
The second allocation is done by the highest of the remainder after the point. And so you start with the highest one, 0.9 whatever, 0.8 whatever, 0.7 whatever, and each party is allocated 1 seat at a time according to the highest remainder. The next highest remainder after the EFF was the NFP with 0.45 something. And so it got allocated 1 seat from the remainder, even though it got 19,000 and something votes instead of the 43,000 and something. The other parties after the NFP had smaller remainders than what the NFP had something smaller than 0.45, etc. And so the reason why the NFP seat didn't then go to one of the other bigger parties is that when you do that second allocation, you give seats 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 until all of the seats are completed. So the EFF or the MK party or the ANC or the DA couldn't have gotten an extra bonus of 2 seats because that's just not how the system works. And that's not how the system has ever worked.
Yeah, and also if you take into consideration that after that point, it's not a full percentage. So it's still a fraction of a percentage point. But thank you so much for that explanation, Dr. Sithembile Mbete. I hope that people have understood. If you didn't understand what she just said, we're going to upload this on our YouTube channel, so you can go back and listen to the conversation that we had with Dr. Sithembile Mbete, who is from the Department of Political Sciences at the University of Pretoria.